Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. Before starting with the today's agenda, I would like to sincerely thank you all for subscribing to my channel. It really gives a sense of encouragement when you have a little few subscribers for making good videos for the viewers. And so thank you all, and let's start with the today's agenda. So as I have stated in my previous video, that was my first introductory video, that I would be coming up with my first lecture on CRPC. So today that is what is in the agenda. Today I'll be dealing with certain aspects of CRPC, wherein I'll tell you about what kind of a statute, or what kind of the statute is the CRPC, that is the Code of Criminal Procedure. And we will also discuss certain aspects of this CRPC that is covered under Chapter 1. So without taking much of your time, let's start with the lecture. And before that, let me tell you that this complete video will be divided in 2 or maybe 3 parts as per the requirement, because making one video of a longer duration is not a good idea. I have previously I was doing so, and I thought that would not be a good idea to do so. So I am now making 3 shorter videos of equal duration. So that will be a better thing to do in my view. So let's start with it. So so Code of Criminal Procedure is a subject in law which comes under the ambit of criminal law, and it is a procedural statute. So before informing you all as to how the CRPC is a procedural law, let me tell you a bit about the procedural law and the difference between the procedural and the substantive law. So there are two kinds of law, two nature of law, laws in two nature of statutes rather in law. One is substantive in nature, and the other one is procedural in nature. So the substantive laws are those statutes or laws are those laws which tells you about your rights and obligations. For example, the Indian Penal Code. So the IPC 1860 informs you also with you I mean the natural persons and the artificial person, as is described in the IPC in the definition of person. So it says that in substantive law, so we were talking about IPC as a substantive law. So in IPC, the various offenses are described as to what amounts to an offense, and what are the penalties and imprisonments prescribed under the statute, that is IPC, for those offenses. So this makes IPC a substantive offense. And how these offenses are trialed in before the court of law, the procedure to it is given under your CRPC, which we will be dealing in the course of our lectures. Let me give an example of this substantive and procedure. For example, if you take an offense under section 302 IPC that talks about punishment to murder, and section 300 IPC talks about mentions the definition of murder. So both of these sections, 300 IPC and 302 IPC, are substantive in nature. 30 defines what is murder. It tells you what all will constitute murder. And 302 tells you that if a person is convicted under section 300 IPC, then a certain amount of imprisonment will be awarded to the person, that to the convict, that is mentioned in the statute. So that is the substantivity of the IPC. And the trial of any accused who is charged under section 302 IPC is governed under section 226 of CRPC to section 302 to section 238. 238 CRPC, which talks about trial before a court of session. So since your the offense of murder is very grave in nature, so and so it is dealt so it is adjudicated before the court of session. uh, so this is what is the difference between a procedural law and a substantive law. In civil domain also there is a difference between procedural and substantive law. For example, if you take the Indian Contract Act 1872 or the Specific Relief Act, so that these two statutes are substantive in nature, as it tells you about how a contract is formed, what would be the liabilities and rights of the parties in case the breach of a contract happens, etc. And the code of civil procedure gives you the gives guides the court as to how any dispute which arises out of the breach of contract is to be adjudicated by them, by the court of law. And the other question which often comes up during this discussion is that which of the two law is superior in nature, that is whether substantive law is superior or the procedural law. So to answer this question, there is a common phraseology in law that procedure is the handmaid of justice. So this implies that any procedure cannot no procedure cannot stand the accused and the between the accused and the justice that and the justice that which that accused you know should attain. With that I mean, for example, if any FIR is to be registered and time of a lapse of 15 to 20 days have occurred from the time of occurrence of the offense and the FIR is not registered, then this lapse of time will not be the only criteria to not register the FIR, because if it is done so without any probable or rational reason, then that will be prejudicial to the victim, because then the offense will not be registered and no investigation will happen and no justice will can ever be provided to the victim. So therefore we say that procedure is just the handmaid of justice. It only helps the court to attain justice. It should not act as any impairment or any obstacle between for the court to finally attain justice. So that this is the reason that substantive law is always has an upper hand, and procedural law is always kept at the second place. So that is all the all what is to be understood in between with respect to the difference between procedural and substantive law. Now coming to CRPC. So viewers, CRPC is, as I've said, is a procedural law. So it contains before that I must tell you that there are 2 years of this statute which is to be kept in mind. That the first is its enactment year, that is 1973. Excuse me. And the other is the year of its enforcement, that is 1st April 1974. Now why these dates are to be kept in mind? These dates are important for the viewers who are preparing for judicial services, because often it is seen that in the preliminary examinations such kind of questions are generally asked. In my Rajasthan prelims examination also a similar type of question was asked, wherein it was asked that when a particular statute was published in the Gazette. Now that was a really typical question, because usually nobody gives the attention to such details, but so therefore anybody who's preparing for these examinations must take care of these dates also. And it is not very hard to remember it if you if you will give it a glance and you will note it somewhere. Yeah, and so it will help you in remembering the dates, and you can fetch 1 or 2 extra marks. So and okay, now moving forward. So CRPC is a very lengthy subject, and it is also one of my favorite subjects and favorite subjects of most of the lawyers. It is divided into 37 chapters 484 sections and 2 schedules. And why I am laying emphasis on this detail, because questions on these details are also asked in the preliminary examination, as to in the manner that how many total sections are there in CRPC, how many schedules are there, or how many in how many chapters it is divided. So it is really important to also remember these stuff for so that you again can, it will fetch you a mark or two if it is ever asked in any of the examination. Now the second part of this video will be uploaded along with this video, but this video will contain this much only because the time is exceeding. It is already more than 10 minutes. I don't want to expand it more. So thank you for watching, and I'll update the second video along with this one.